This is a nice machine, a good daily PC. It has 16GB of reasonably fast RAM, a 3200G, decent motherboard and frankly overkill power supply. I ran it for a while with this RX 480 4GB, which is in my opinion the perfect fit for it. Any less and you might as well stick with the integrated GPU. Any more and, well, let me put it another way, say that if this was a guy, it would be the sort of dude you would be happy that your daughter is dating after her divorce in her mid-30s. A good country boy with a decent state education, okay job managing a farm, already paid the mortgage and owns a couple of small properties to boot while driving around in a 60-year-old mid-size sedan. But then midlife crisis hits and he decides to go all out and buy himself a brand new McLaren MP1 using his life savings and go weekend racing. Will he become a driving sensation or crash and burn? Well, let's find out. I think you figured out what the MP1 is in this analogy by now. But before all of that, a disclaimer. This is a silly video without any real benchmarking value. I am not suggesting anyone out there should build a system like this except for entertainment purposes. Now I got a bit lucky. I managed to get my hands on a RTX 3080 Founders Edition at MSRP no less, in what was a very long and very painful process, going to puerile lengths such as waking up at 3 AM because around that time some retailers released stock. I will have some more in-depth comments about this card once I really get the chance to take it for a whirl, but for now I must say I love the packaging. It's very Apple-esque, but they really got to work on the box friction because they got that really wrong. Not that I think that should be any sort of yardstick when measuring a GPU performance. The aesthetics are subjective I guess, but after a bit of usage I can say I prefer the more traditional coolers. I don't have anything against experimentation, I really do appreciate Nvidia trying to push the envelope here, but some of the choices don't make a lot of sense. Like, for instance, I've seen that they've used subpar thermal pads that a lot of people are complaining that from what I've personally seen led to 102°C temperatures on the memory in Cyberpunk 4K, and obviously with RTX on. And honestly, how much does one of those memory consume? 3-4 watts? It's not that much, but that's all for another video. It is saying something when even a mid-range card like the RTX 3060 Ti, in my case the X Trio from MSI, is significantly bigger and quieter than this 3080 Founders Edition. First off is Heaven, and although this is an older benchmark, I mean I first used this to test the shiny new DirectX 11 capability of my GTX 480, it actually holds up quite well, pushing even cutting edge GPUs to 100% utilization easily. Now I've limited the 3080 to 90% power to make sure we don't get any erroneous spikes above 400 watts. That would be bad for a PSU that is rated for 600 watts that is not exactly platinum certified or anything. All the major hiccups you can see here are purely down to the capture card. I don't know why it didn't have a good time capturing output from the RTX 3080, but that being said, there are a few frame time spikes where the scenes transition. This is normal for Heaven. All in all, since this is purely a GPU benchmark, I would say the CPU held up very well indeed here. Superposition is a much newer benchmark and it shows that it's a lot harder to run. Not exactly an issue for the 3080, but how about the 3200G? And as with the previous one, since this is exclusively aimed at GPU benchmarking, the CPU requirements are fairly sedate, with the overall usage hovering around 55%, meaning we are still not bottlenecking the 3080, on paper at least. In reality, just looking at the CPU usage in isolation is a bit misleading since this only goes up to 3.0 GHz under heavy load. I will redo all these tests with the same settings on my 5950X to see how much an improvement that gives us. Rocket League. This game confounds me with every run. It seems the issue with the overlay is only on iGPU, so here it runs fine. At least we get to see how the CPU is doing, and would you look at that, it's not bad showing for a 4-core no SMT Ryzen. And as I previously said, this does not mean it's still not holding back performance. It might be that the RAM speed is contributing, the motherboard, the fact we are running on PCI Gen 3, lots of things, but does mean that in theory it's not a bad pairing of hardware. I'm getting excited here and a bit terrified of how I can justify my next CPU upgrade. Well, panic over. This is what a hard CPU bottleneck looks like, pegged at 100% utilization while the GPU is taking the dog out for a walk. I am sure it was coming, but I didn't expect Fortnite to be the one to deliver such a clear-cut example of the CPU throttling performance. But is there a saving grace? What about Fortnite with this newfangled ray tracing mode? Will that prove to be a redeemer? And presto, no more bottleneck. Granted, I had to disable DLSS for that to be the case, but just know you're getting the full resolution without any upscaling trickery. Not that anyone cares. And to be fair to Nvidia, myself in most titles, I can't really tell except for the performance degradation when DLSS is on or off. This is a bit rough to watch. The 3080 is boosted nicely though. Don't get me wrong, it's totally hobbled by the CPU, but still at 90% power, going in touching distance of 2 GHz while not exceeding 60% utilization looks really good to me. I must admit, Horizon Zero Dawn surprised me a bit. After including so many system tests, I don't know why, but I thought it consumed way less CPU resource than it actually does. Yeah, the Stranding runs well as expected. Every time I play this game using an iGPU, it amazes me how good it looks and how well optimized it is, even in comparison to Horizon Zero Dawn, which it shares its engine with, and frankly, this time is no exception. While it did keep the CPU pegged at 100%, it used the power on offer very wisely and managed to stay mostly above 60 FPS when out and about, with dips limited to only where near settlements. And here we go, this is why you can't just look at the utilization for a given processor and call it a day. I know that my 3080, admittedly at 100% power, sits around 80 FPS at 1080p Ultra in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. With the same settings here we are only averaging above 40, so kind of halfway where we should expect it to be. The game I most wanted to see how it performs is Cyberpunk. I know from previous testing that this game loves cores and the little 3200G is a bit short on those. But still, I thought that by dialing up the settings to bad guano crazy will make the 3080 if not the main bottleneck, then it will at least push it past 80%-ish utilization. Not sure if this was primarily due to Cyberpunk's less than stellar performance on lower end hardware or what, but obviously that did not happen. I initially wanted to do this video with my 3060 Ti as that would have at least been in the realm of plausible without the shortage, but that was a really massive MSI X3 cooler on it and it just wouldn't fit in this case, so I went with plan B and chucked the 3080 Founders Edition in there. I must admit, the little APU did much better than I expected. I think I'll redo this video using an Athlon 200G or something that I'm hoping to acquire soon, maybe downgrade the RAM to a single 8GB stick and then we will have something to oogle at. I would have gone with an FX chip or a first gen i3, but I think that defeats the purpose as the age gap is just too big between the hardware. Introducing other complexities such as the system maybe not posting due to the fact that the graphics card has too much memory, or other incompatibilities due to the fact that the sets of hardware were simply not meant to work together. Well, anyway, that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed my silly video and hope to see you all in the next one.